What's this? Hey everybody, welcome back for another BH at Home. Today, we're getting balls deep for our Italian meatballs. A rich, succulent, hearty dish, perfect for a summer or a winter occasion. That was so good until the end.
Pretty much all the occasions.
So this recipe is one of our family favourites. It's been passed down through the generations. You know, my nonna used to cook it on a Sunday afternoon. Always wanted the recipe, and I eventually snuck a little peek and took a photo when she wasn't looking. It's one of those dishes you can cook it up in an hour, but you could trick somebody into thinking you've been slaving away all day in the kitchen. Any old sod can cook some meatballs, but this is going to take your ball handling game to the next level. There's a secret ingredient in this recipe. Play your cards right, I'll let you know what it is. So the first step of this recipe is obviously getting your onions and garlic peeled. We're going to slowly sweat them off. And we're going to multitask today and get a couple of dishes going at the same point in time. I know, men can do it. So to start this recipe, we're going to get our onions and brunoise them up. That's a fine dice. We're going to put them in a bowl and take them over to our pot and get them sweating off. Slice it across the middle. Then we're going to take our knife and just straight down. We've got some nice little dices here. At the end of it, we're just going to chop through. We want it roughly the same sort of size. It's important that they're nice and small pieces here, or you're going to get a big chunk of onion in your mouth. It's fucking, I need one of Tim's tricks with those goggles, man. So to kick this bad boy off, we're going to get it nice and hot, chuck our onions in, then we're going to turn it nice and low. Like all good Italian things, we're going to start with a nice lashing of olive oil. 2 to 3 tablespoons in your pot. And we're just going to get our onions in straight after that. So while this is nice and hot, we're going to get the onions straight in. Gonna hear that sizzle. Then we're gonna turn our heat to a low to medium heat. We're just gonna let them sit in there and cook around. You just wanna coat all of the onion with a bit of oil so it doesn't stick to the bottom of your pot. Try and keep it in there. So we're gonna peel our garlic here. We've got our cloves. Gonna put our knife on, gently press on. You don't wanna slash your hands. Get away the skins. Now, a couple of little things. Good fresh garlic is gonna take your recipe to the next level. You could use the jar stuff, but you know, at Burgerhead, we always try to give the best product that we can. So we're gonna take our knife now, crush them a bit more. Also run our knife through a little bit. So after we finish chopping our garlic here, we're gonna scoop it up, walk it over to the pot and chuck it straight in. Get a spatula here, stir it around a bit, and just keep cooking this down for another minute or two. We're also going to put in a bit of dried oregano. I'd prefer fresh, but we couldn't find any at the markets this morning. So Master Foods has kindly provided us with today's oregano. Gonna get a good lashing in here. You can smell it all cooking down. Fuck, it smells good up this big nose. So like I mentioned before, I can multitask. I'm going to have that cooking back there behind us. We're going to split that up into 2. Oh shit. We've got that cooking behind us. We're going to split it up into 2, leave half of it in there with our sauce. We're going to chuck some tin tomatoes in, and the rest we're going to leave aside for our meatballs, which we're going to make next. With any good Napolitana sauce, you're always going to want to use a nice Italian tomato. Now this Muti brand is always a good brand. Pomodoro, Italian word for tomato. The surefire way to make sure that you've got an Italian product is look on the back, look for that made in Italy, right there. So we're just going to grab a couple of these tins here, 3 to be exact for the recipe that we're going with, and we're going to chuck them straight into our pot. So we're just going to give this a quick stir to mix the onion in with the tomato, make sure nothing there is sitting on the bottom. And then we're just going to leave our heat on a nice low heat and let it simmer. Grab a nice big pinch of salt in right now. Maybe 2 to be honest for the amount we've got going here. We're then going to grab our spatula and give it a nice mix. We'll leave this on for the next hour or so. So the first step in making our meatballs, we're going to grab our bread. No, that was a bit shit. Damn! Grab our bread, rip it up into some chunks and pour some milk over and let it sit for 20 to 30 minutes. Today, we've opted for a sourdough. Now, you can use white bread at home if you've got it in the cupboard at home, but a sourdough is going to give it that extra depth of flavour and that bite. Grab out a couple of slices here. We want to take the crust off. You want the bread part. Now this here is going to sort of help in binding it. So some other pleb recipes are going to call for just using plain old breadcrumbs. But today the fresh bread here is going to help give that nice plump meatball. Once the milk's all soaked in, cooks out, you're going to sort of steam up and make the balls a bit larger. Everybody likes bigger balls. So we're going to need about 150 grams of bread here, pulled up. Then we're going to take a cup of milk and pour it straight over and let it sit for 20 minutes. Just use the scales at home if you're unsure of how much to put in. So we're gonna pour about a cup of that milk. Make sure you soak up all the bread here. Just leave that to sort of soak up all into the bread. So you wanna make sure you don't forget about this sauce over here. You wanna keep coming over periodically and keep stirring that sauce. You don't wanna be like myself when one time a few years back I burnt $400 to $500 worth of sauce at the Hyatt and had to find a new job. So I opened up a burger shop. Round 2. Better leave some for the cooking.
Oh, for fuck's sake. No, there's not one up here. There's not one up here.
Corner cupboard, what's the that thing there?
It's not in here though, that's why I just looked. No, because I looked in there and it wasn't there. I'm not a fucking retard.
Chicken up there.
What one?
Chicken the bottom up there.
Where?
Oh, that's not bloody where it belongs.
Got some of my favourite cheese here, Parmesan. Comes from the northern region of Italy, Parma. So we're gonna grate this up. We're gonna use a little bit for the meatballs and a little bit for our pesto we're gonna make a little bit later on. So the more even it falls all over the bench, the better. It just makes it a real pain in the ass for my missus to clean up later. So we've finished grating up our Parmesan. Nice handful here, probably about 100 odd grams. Straight into our mix. We want to leave a little bit here left over for our pesto. Next up, grabbing our milk, grabbing our bread here, squeezing out all of the milk. Chuck it in there. Make sure you get all of it. Squeeze out as much milk as possible, otherwise you're going to have these runny meatballs and loose and all over the place. Try not to make a mess like I am, otherwise your mum's going to slap you straight over the neck. Take our onion mix. We had half of that left over from before. Scrape that into the Thermomix here. Now, this recipe's been pretty cheap so far, but you're gonna have to go out and get yourself a Thermomix. 2,300 bucks. Otherwise, I recommend just getting a normal food processor. Last but not least, we're gonna chuck 1 egg in here. Crack it open, try not to get eggshell, like my last little foray on camera, and chuck the lid on. Oh shit, no, one more ingredient. If you're still here listening to me talk shit, you realise I'm missing that secret ingredient. What is it, you ask? Mortadella. Gonna pop it straight in. Probably about 300 grams. You know what, 200. Chuck it in, leave a little bit for later. You want something to snack on. So once it's all in there, we're gonna turn our machine on and blend it all into a nice paste. Now that we've finished off our paste, we're gonna grab our meat here. We've got 2 types of mince. We've got some beef mince and some pork mince. We're gonna chuck it all into the bowl. We're gonna start to mix it up. So we're using 2 different types of meat here, predominantly for the flavour. Now the pork's gonna give that sort of real rich porky flavour, and the beef's just gonna be there. It's amazing, you know. Once we get it all caramelising in the pan, those flavours are just gonna really be accentuated. Now we've mixed it together a little bit. We're gonna take our paste that we made a little bit earlier, with our breadcrumb, our bread, our cheese, and our mortadella. We're gonna sort of work that into this mix here. So we're gonna work this, and we're gonna combine it to a nice even mixture. So just working it back and forth, really. You can see it really starting to lighten up a bit. That's where the paste is combining with the meat here. A heaping of salt, maybe 2 or 3 handfuls. Continue to work that through. You could use a KitchenAid if you're feeling a little bit lazy. But I'm just gonna use these big guns. Being on the gym, you know, gotta make use of it. So when we're portioning, we want a nice consistent size between all of our meatballs that we're portioning out. I'm going for about 40 grams here. Now the reason for that is when we're cooking, we want them all to cook at the same time, so we don't have any that are overcooked or undercooked. When handling balls, it's always good to have some nice wet hands. I've got some water here, cold, you don't want it hot. You just want to, the meat will fall off your hands, it won't stick. We've portioned up our meatballs and now we're going to go put them over in the freezer. Now the reason we're putting them in the freezer is so when they cook, they sort of retain their shape. So we're going to leave them in there for about 10 to 15 minutes, just to chill up a little bit before we get cooking. So we've popped back over to our sauce here. We're giving it our last little stir and we're going to season it all up. So we're going to add some brown sugar in, some salt and some basil. So I'm adding in about half a teaspoon of brown sugar, a good pinch of salt, and then we're going to grab maybe a quarter of a bunch of basil here and rip off some of the leaves. So now we're going to blend it all together with a stick blender. I like to do this to have a nice smooth sauce to go around our meatballs. I want the meatballs to be the star of the dish. So what we're looking for in this sauce as we've blended it together is a nice smooth consistency. Now we're going to use that to coat the meatballs nice and evenly. So always taste your sauce as you're going. Bang on, no more salt for me. So we're just going to bring over our meatballs here. They've been nice and chilled in the freezer, make sure they're nice and firm, and then we're going to chuck them straight in the pot. So we're going to get the rest of our meatballs in here. You want a nice hot pan, a little bit of olive oil on the bottom so they don't stick. You also want to space them out nicely. If you bunch them all up together, they're not going to get that nice golden crust. Now we've got a few meatballs here, so we're going to need to cook them in 2 different runs. And you just want to leave them on each side for about a minute. So as we're cooking these here, we want to turn them. We want a nice golden brown color on each side. That's the parmesan, the meat and the bread all caramelizing there. So while we're waiting, we're going to take a nice sip of wine. And we might use the rest to deglaze the pan. So we've just cooked the last batch of meatballs. We have the rest of them on the side over here. We're chucking them all back into the pot. So we're grabbing our nap sauce, we're going to pour that all over. Get it all in there. Then we're going to give it a little mix. You want the sauce at the bottom so the meatballs don't burn. Gently fold it over so you don't smash your meatballs up. Oh, I just mashed one up. Shit happens. Then we're going to go to the lid on, low heat, 5 to 10 minutes. So the next part of this recipe is our pesto genovese. Now our pesto comes from the Genoa region, which is in the north of Italy. It's along the coastline. So traditionally we've got basil, pine nuts, a garlic, parmesan, and some olive oil. Today, my recipe, my method isn't really 100% traditional in my approach, but Nonno, please don't crucify me. It's going to taste fucking amazing. So we want to use about a bunch of parsley here. We want to pick off all the leaves. We don't want none of those stems. They're the nasty bits. If you're short for time and you want to whip together a 15 or 20 minute meal, this is the perfect dish. You're going to impress that special someone. So the next up, we're going to take our pine nuts, put them in a medium to low heat here, and we're just going to slowly toast them off. Now you don't want to burn them because they're going to start to taste bitter and you don't want that in your pesto. Now's a good time to be practicing that flick of the wrist. It's a good time, you just don't want to be getting those nuts on the floor. So we've toasted our pine nuts, a nice golden colour, straight into a nice tall jar here. Chuck that on the side, drop our garlic in, the rest of our cheese. And then we're going to go with a nice healthy amount of olive oil. What we want to do here is we're going to grab the stick blender next, and we're going to make a nice paste. So you want to start by pulsing it. So we've got our nice paste here where the pine nuts, the cheese and the oil and the garlic are all combined. So we're going to put that bunch of thyme in, get the stick blender back in, blend away. So we're going to add a little bit more olive oil. Prior we added about 100 mils, probably going to add another 100 right now. We're going to start blending it again and you're going to see it's going to start to thicken up and come together. Bro, your stick blender's a bit slower than mine. So just going to grab a nice pinch of salt, maybe 2. Give it a spoon, mix it in. We're looking for this nice consistency here. So this pesto here is great to chuck through pasta, on a dip, on a sandwich, anything really. Oh shit. Right, so now we're going to plate up our dish. We've got our pasta, we've cooked over here before, a little earlier. Now I didn't teach you how to cook pasta a little earlier because quite frankly, if you can't do that, why are you watching this video? So we're going to get our pasta into the bowl now, get a nice shape formed. Time for our meatballs. Give it a stir, we want to get the sauce all down from the bottom. So we've got our juicy meatballs in there, nice and flavorful. There's 3 types of meat in there. So at the beginning of this, we mentioned that we're going to take your meatballs to the next level. Now this rich floral pesto is going to just do the trick. So here it is, a family favourite of ours, rich meatballs with a pesto genovese, also featuring on this week's Burgerhead special, our balls deep. Head on down and try it out.